Welcome back to Beyond the Classroom. Today, we're going to speak with Rhonda Priest, and we are going to discuss the Certified Manager Program, what it is, who it's for, and all those fun and interesting facts. So, Rhonda, what is the Certified Manager Program, and who was it designed for?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and, correct you, but it's a certified public manager program, so we
Mhm.
call it CPM. You'll hear me, use that language as we go through our time together. It actually was developed in the mid-70s. It was the result of actually the then Governor Jimmy Carter, who was the governor of Georgia, and was recognizing really how there wasn't anything out there specific to the needs of public managers, those people in city, county, state government, and federal government, and even some of those agencies that work with those entities. And so unlike an MBA, now we have, masters in public administration, which really gives you a lot of theory, very, worthwhile, but this is really more of a hands-on approach to public management, and the needs that are unique to this population, and of course, a lot of things that are just good management and leadership theory as well, but, that's who it's for, and, there's over 40 programs across the United States and internationally. There can only be one entity per, state that's accredited, and we're the only community college in the world that does this. All of the other programs are accredited either it's a university or it's a state HR agency, and so, another way that we're unique, I know Wyoming's always proud of being unique in every way possible, and, it's really for those public sector either potential leaders or those that are new in leadership positions or are wanting to grow, in that role that are in that public sector space.
Okay. So, designed by President Carter way back in the 70s, because he recognized the need.
Right.
What is the value that Wyoming's public sector leaders get from this? What do they get out of this that they couldn't get any other way?
Sure, sure. And so it's really the best of both worlds. It's in this sense that it is accredited by the National CPM Consortium. There are several competencies that are included in that. So there is that continuity and that level of quality that's expected. But it also is unique to Wyoming in that we get to deliver it how we choose. We choose to use a cohort model. We can also have speakers from Wyoming. We can talk specifically about Wyoming finances, Wyoming um, laws and legislature, just the Wyoming culture, and some of the challenges that that brings, and also some of the opportunities that we have too. And then the people that are in this cohort get to interact with one another in ways they may not get to otherwise. And so you have a lot of cross sector, especially cross agency type of interactions going on, which is pretty special to watch.
Yeah, that networking piece is
Yes,
huge.
yes,
So my understanding is this program runs for an entire year.
it does.
And so what does the experience, you've touched a little bit as far as the networking goes, what does the experience for these participants look like across that year?
Yeah. And so, like I said, each state can deliver it how it sees fit. And for us, we decided a cohort model was the best. Our program started in the first cohort started in '09, with graduation in '10. That's when we were accredited, and so we've been running now for about 15 years, having at least one cohort each year. And so our cohorts always start in October, graduate and present their capstone projects in September, and they meet 3 days a month, usually towards the beginning of the month, here in LCCC. It is in person, and of course, we had to pivot during the pandemic like everyone else, but really understand the value of having people in the same room away from their office to gain this experience. There's just something different about that that we're, not wanting to let go of. So because of the consortium, because of the accreditation, there are 7 different competencies that are interwoven throughout our sessions. So, personal and organizational integrity, managing your work, so kind of the nuts and bolts of what we do, leading people, developing self, which we spend a lot of time on, systemic integration, Also, public sector focus, which is different than maybe a lot of other leadership programs that are more for profit based. And then also change leadership. And so those are, um, like I said, embedded in everything that we do. And then we start the beginning of the year. Those first 3 days are always pretty impactful because we start out with the Myers-Briggs type indicator that they complete beforehand. These individuals are already vetted by their agencies. Um, they've been identified because of their potential. And so they come into the classroom, they meet for the first time, and then we get to know each other. We learn more about ourselves. We learn, we introduce the capstone project, which is required of our program. And it has to be something above and beyond their regular work duties. And so it's something that will benefit their either the people they serve. It may be that it will impact their unit or department. It may be the agency as a whole. If it's scalable, it's something that could be modeled and used by someone, another agency. That makes it all the better because we do want it to have that stickiness, that it has importance not just for the capstone project, but it's something that is built on year after year. And so then we meet every 3 months, 3 days, once a month, um, come in together, and it's not like a traditional college classroom, which I think delights most people. And sometimes people are a little weary because they're like, I don't think I want to. I have been a long time since I've been in the classroom, right? And it's nothing like that. It's why I love adult education so much. And so we get to learn a lot from one another. And then we focus in on all of those different topics that you'll find on our webpage. But in addition to understanding yourself, communicating for leadership success, communication, of course, something we hear no matter what kind of training we're doing here at the college, leading specifically in the public sector, also strategic planning, systems thinking, problem solving, process improvement. Um, have someone come in and teach public speaking skills as well as presentation skills. We spend some time on business writing. That's become actually a greater need than it did in the earlier years of us doing this, but we're able to flex um, depending on what kind of feedback we received. Looking at introducing some project management tools and for people that may not consider themselves project managers, and then a lot around emotional intelligence and building that organizational trust within the culture that we're working in. Um, do a lot around mediation and conflict management, legislative law, um, HR for non-HR managers, which is where many of our individuals find themselves. Um, Especially as you advance in leadership, you have to understand the implications of those HR decisions, and when you need to bring in the experts, right? Um, we do include the Clifton Strengths Assessment too. So we talk about strengths-based leadership, visionary leadership. They do some leadership book report and a leader presentation, how to motivate others, how to build a cohesive team. We've talked more recently, about what's it like to manage a dispersed team. So if everyone's not in the office together, which is pretty common, um, looking at how to coach for success and then how to deal with performance issues, understanding public policy and how to influence it, managing public finances. And so you can see it is a large basket of different topics that we cover over our 12 months together, which actually adds up to over 300 hours of instruction time that the individuals receive.
Yeah, that's I had no idea the topics were so diverse
They
in there,
are.
and there's some great ones. I mean, self-improvement, that's huge. A lot of us don't spend enough time on that. Change management isn't going through change these days.
Right.
Divert our dispersed teams,
Uh-huh.
that's huge, right? Prior to the pandemic, maybe not as big, but now we're still grappling with how do we deal with that. There's a lot of great topics in
It
there.
is, which is why I love it so much. So,
And of course, influencing public policy. Huh.
yeah.
Public managers influencing public policy. Who would have
And how do
thought?
we do that? Because we do have to walk that line, right? So we can't lobby. Most of our organizations are very explicit about what we can and can't do.
Right.
But how can we provide solid information to help our makers make better decisions and to build those relationships so they trust who it's coming from.
That's awesome. So this capstone project, I did one as part of my MBA when I did it, when I went down to Regis, but obviously this is a huge portion of it. Can you give us an example of you've been doing this for the better part of 15 years, you said? Give us an example of one of the capstones and maybe how it's influenced or been put into practice by somebody after they got back into the workplace.
Sure, there's so many examples. The one that comes to mind first is back in the early years. So it was I was a graduate of the program in 2011, and so the one of my cohort um, members was from Department of Workforce Services. And during that time, a lot of the state agencies really didn't know what to do with social media. It was kind of a no-no. And, everyone else was out there using it, Facebook and probably MySpace, I don't know how long, but anyway, there was a lot of, kind of those early, um, apps that people were using, but the state agencies were not allowed to because really they didn't know how, and there was a lot of concern about risk. And one of the participants at that time started doing a lot of the legwork. She was actually in the marketing area for that agency and was realizing that it was an untapped resource, but how can we do this in a way that, it's gonna have the guardrails that we need to as a public sector entity. And, so she did a lot of that work, and then the following year and so her project was really making those recommendations and doing the research that often we know we need to do, it just gets pushed aside, which is one of the things about capstone projects. A lot of times it can be those projects that you've never been able to make time to do, and now's a great time to do it. And then the next year, one of her colleagues picked it up and carried it forward and implemented it. And they had, they set up the training for their staff, understanding what you can do, what you can't, who can have accounts, who administers those accounts, all of those things, what's appropriate, what's not. And so they were one of the first agencies, if not the first, that started using social media to communicate with their clients and connect with them, and also with the general community. And so fast forward, and so over the years, they were going in and talking to other agencies and helping them do the same thing in their organizations because they had kind of set that foundation and it had been vetted, and that was really how a lot of the work that's been done using social media across all of our agencies came to be.
That's really neat, and it's neat that they weren't the one to run with it, right? One of their coworkers saw so much value in that capstone that they picked it up
Yeah.
and ran with it. Well, it's rewarding for you, but it's really neat to see. So, and I guess that kind of feeds into a question I've got.
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming that in a lot of these cases, the agencies, the employer is paying for this training.
Absolutely.
What's their return on investment? How do they see value coming back out of this?
Yeah. So the return on investment, you just kind of had one of those aha moments, I believe, when I said, over 300 hours of instruction. And the cost for our program, and think about it. I mean, we're talking about 11 months that you're let's say 10 months that you're in the classroom. So 30 hours, 3 days. And then we have the capstone project graduation coming up at the end. And then in July, we don't meet in person. It's a busy time for a lot of people, but they do turn in their capstone um, project reports, drafts at that time. So there is some work to be done, but they get a pass on attending classes. 300 plus hours, plus a capstone. And if those individuals or that employer were to pay for those classes outright, and we offer many of those topics
Yeah.
through our open enrollment or customized training, it would exceed over $9,000 per person between the assessments and those classes at the price that we charge for half a day or a full day. That in itself is a great return on investment because you're getting all of that. In addition, you're getting that capstone, which is being, not only are they working on it throughout their year, but they're getting a lot of support, um, interaction with their cohort, taking what they learn in the classroom and applying it to their capstone. And sometimes capstones don't always go the way we plan, but there's lessons in that too. And so and you're also getting that capstone, which should be something above and beyond that person's regular job duties. And the capstone is required to have some type of impact. So is it reducing expenses? Is it increasing productivity? Is it increasing retention? There's so many different things that it can do. And so that's that return on investment. Hard to put a dollar amount on it because it varies so much. Sometimes it's, more of that morale. And how do you measure that? Well, maybe over time you could see a decrease in your people that are leaving or um, just becoming less engaged. But then there are other things that have a significant dollar impact from the very beginning, and, we've seen that too through some prescription, medication programs, through tracking, um, inventory that wasn't being done before. I know state parks did that. We've seen that with some others. A lot of times we just forget all of the different investments we've made as an organization, and where is it, right? And then how are we tracking it? How are we getting it back? How are we um, you know, replacing it in a timely manner. I know our campus has worked a lot on that, a lot different now than it was when I started. And so agencies doing that kind of work, looking at succession planning, um, how contracts are signed and processed. Maybe we've got too many stops along the way, or it being bounced back. When maybe we could eliminate a couple of those steps, but we just haven't taken time to evaluate it. It's just evolved. Um, and so it's really neat to see the variety of different, projects that people take on, and even this year, they will be presenting them in next week, so early part of September, and just some of the projects that have been taken on using, SharePoint to create a dashboard so that all of the deputies and the sheriff can communicate well, in a way that before was on bulletin boards and lots of emails and people not showing up for training because it wasn't on their calendar and all of those things. And so, really excited to see that one come to fruition. Um, Looking at how to recruit and better with our sheriff's deputies, and so working with the commissioners to do that, and learning how to pitch things right, depending on who your audience is. Um, Looking at how there are certain populations that aren't being as well served by some of our programs and how we can make sure that those vulnerable or those people that are maybe falling through the gaps, how we can make sure we're um, giving them opportunities. First, that they know about our programs and then that they're given opportunities to participate. And so that's something that one of the projects around our senior centers and aging is working on. So, yeah, I get excited about it.
It's cool. So you named several dozen
Uh huh.
different topics that they cover. Obviously, a couple of them stood out to me when I called them out. What do you find is the biggest aha moment for most of the students?
Yeah, there's actually a couple that consistently I hear. One of them is just the self awareness. So, whether it really starts happening during that first session when we introduce Myers Briggs, or as we continue that work through the whole year, and then usually about midway through, we do Clifton Strengths, which is a completely just another layer. Um, so, understanding not only our where we show up well, but where we might have blind spots, where we might annoy the heck out of other people, and why, and understanding that just because someone else approaches something differently, may even see things completely differently, it isn't a right or wrong, black and white issue. It's understanding perspective and being more open to that we all have value. We all bring something special to our organizations and to our teams, and how we can be better contributors in that space is a big one. And then I know even for me, when I went through Myers Briggs the first time, and now I facilitate both it and Clifton Strengths. And like many of these people, especially those that have been in the workforce for a while, man, I wish I'd known this earlier, right? And I know that was true for me because it was just one of those big aha moments like, oh, well, now I get me. And now I get why opposites attract and why, when it's good and when it's not, whether in our personal lives or our professional lives. Um, and I think at one time, or probably those earlier parts of my career, maybe you can relate, probably a little more confidence than we should have had. And, and I could convince people I could do a lot of things, but being able to deliver on it, especially at the quality and the consistency that I wanted and they expected, was a challenge. But now I know why. Um, and if it's something that's in my wheelhouse, I can show up well consistently and with the quality, right? But now I'm much quicker to say, you know, I'm not your person for that, but I can help you find someone that is. Um, and then if it's something that I can do and contribute well, then I definitely must step forward and do that. So that level of self-awareness has been huge, not just for me, but for so many others that have come through the program. I like seeing the confidence build. But then the one that probably does that the best is we have something called the Mock Joint Appropriations Committee, the Mock JC. If you're in the public sector world, you know what that is. It's when the directors have to show up and defend their budget before the House and the House of Representatives and the Senate committee for the state. And it's grueling, and any director will tell you that. And most of their staff knows when that's going on because they're just a phone call away. They've got to be ready to go. And we are the only program of any CPM program that offers this opportunity. It's embedded in our program. So we have a mock JC. It happens at the Capitol with real um, people from the legislature, directors, et cetera. They get to sit on the other side of the table, and and they have to defend their budget um, before that committee. And so it's during our public sector budget finance session, public policy, and it's nerve wracking, but it's definitely one of those stretch assignments. I tell every cohort, no one's died. Seriously. And so,
It's
but
it's a grilling without the stakes
it
attached.
is absolutely. And I've had people who have, after they leave CPM, have had to present before that committee and talk about how much better prepared they were for that because of that experience. But it's a real confidence builder, and I love seeing the camaraderie and the sense of accomplishment that happens at the conclusion of that event. It's just you can just feel it in the room, and so that's something else that people often comment on when they talk about our program and what some of their big takeaways are.
Very cool. So, one thing that stands out to me is it looks like you pick up skills over this year that most people take a lifetime to accumulate, or at least a career's worth to accumulate. What other way is the CPM program different than other programs like it?
Yeah, I've already mentioned it. I think one of the main ones is the fact that it's it's a nice balance of having the quality, the credibility, the accreditation. Um, it's been around now for 50 years, continues to grow. Like I said, now we even have some international partners. And so, even on the world stage, it's seeing how people are seeing the need for this. But it also gets to have the flavor of each of our um, own states. And so, even just in Colorado, so our program primarily up until now, we've had state agencies.
Okay.
Um, we have some county, city, had a couple of nonprofits. Um, So that's kind of the makeup of ours so far, but it can include any of those different organizations at those different state and county, city level. Now in Colorado, their program is almost exclusively municipal. And so very few state government people, but more of those city, county municipalities. The same is true for Florida. And so it's just interesting to see how it they've had different people participate in it and how that influences the cohort, um, and the program as a whole. It's, I love that we're able to have people come in that know Wyoming. people that have either served in our public sector leadership and are now, in those retirement years, they still want to give back. Um, like President Schaefer's come in and spoken to our cohort a few times. We had a recently retired Wyoming Supreme Court judge come and speak to our cohort this last time. County commissioners, um, people some in higher education. We've got, just the whole gamut. And it's just really exciting that we can keep it fresh, that it has that home state, flair to it that a lot of other programs, if you take something through, even Harvard, they have great programming, MIT, these others but it's going to be the same for everyone.
And Wyoming's not Massachusetts. Is Massachusetts is not Wyoming.
And
Yep.
and so we can bring a lot of that, um, those leadership topics and things that, maybe wasn't something we need to talk about 10 years ago, but now we do need to talk about. One that we've had that we've included is civil discourse. That was something we didn't have intentionally um, embedded in the program until COVID and beyond.
Okay.
Certainly, dispersed teams was not something that a lot of public sector organizations was even an option, and now it is for many. And how does that vary? Different generations in the workforce. That's always a fun conversation. And then why would the public sector appeal to some and not for others? And how can we sell the public sector better? Um, and also be an advocate for the public sector, because that's something that is really under the microscope right now, is the credibility of our public sector employees and leaders. And I am blown away by the caliber of people that come through this program.
So if you have anybody who's on the fence, listening and on the fence, they're trying to decide, is this the right thing for me? We've got an employer, whether it be state, municipal, trying to decide, should I send my people? How do you convince them?
Well, I've always been a girl for sale, and when you think about just the value you get, spending about $3,400, and if you're able to send more than one person, we do give you a 10% discount off of that to offset that a bit. But what you get in return for that as an agency or an employer, I don't think you're going to find a better deal, right? Especially given that it would be over 9,000 if you were to take those. And you're right. I mean, and just the benefit of taking all of these in a meaningful way, where they're stacked on each other and you're coming back every month and you get to, oh, yeah, I thought about this or I used that or, man, this has really been bothering me. And we get to have those discussions. Whereas a lot of trainings that we go to, you and I both are victims, if you want to call it that, may be really good, but it's a one and done. And even um, in addition to this, I oversee our business training, both customized and our open enrollment. And that is the challenge. You want it to be impactful, but what can you really accomplish in a couple of hours or in a half a day that's going to stick? And with the CPM program, it sticks because you've just got that you're building on it month after month after month and applying it to what you're dealing with at the time. So we also, as a society, but I think especially in the public sector, are not good at succession planning. We start talking about it when it's almost too late, and this is a great way for succession planning. We've had several agencies. The one I will highlight is the Department of Health. They have been an amazing partner since the beginning, and as a result of that, now I have people who graduate from CPM program that are sending their staff to CPM, and every year the same units or departments are sending another round of people, and you start seeing it start to tip because now you've got a solid core group of people that you've invested in, which is a great retention policy because our practice. You may not be able to pay people more, but if they know you're investing in them, that is often enough to keep them around.
That's a wrap for this episode on Beyond the Classroom. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, remember to like, share, subscribe. We'll see you later. I want tomorrow. I want
tomorrow today.